I was standing at my own wedding reception, champagne glass in hand, watching my new mother-in-law hold court with a group of Michael's relatives, when I heard her voice cut through the music and laughter like a knife. "We're not wasting money on her," Linda announced, loud enough for half the room to hear, gesturing in my direction with a dismissive wave that made my stomach drop. Michael's hand found mine instantly, his grip tight, almost painful. "Don't react," he whispered, his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitching. "Not yet." I stood there, frozen, trying to process what I'd just heard. What money? Michael and I had paid for everything ourselves: the venue, the flowers, the overpriced cake that Linda had insisted needed to be bigger. We hadn't asked his parents for a single dollar. We hadn't asked them for anything. So what was she talking about? I looked up at Michael, searching his face for answers, but he just shook his head slightly, his eyes locked on his mother across the room. Linda was smiling now, that satisfied, cat that ate the canary smile I'd learned to dread over the past 2 years. She was showing something on her phone to the relatives clustered around her, and they were nodding, some of them glancing at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Pity? Judgment? Satisfaction? My heart was racing. My face felt hot. And I had no idea what was happening at my own wedding. I had no idea what she meant. But 3 hours later, when my lawyer called during our first dance, everything made sense. Before I continue the story, please subscribe. I need to reach 1,000 subscribers so I can keep bringing you stories like this every day. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Let me rewind 2 years, back to when I met Michael at a mutual friend's dinner party and thought I'd hit the actual jackpot. He was charming, funny, had a real job with a real salary, and didn't live with his parents, which at 32 shouldn't be remarkable, but here we are. We clicked immediately. Stayed up talking until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing, and I remember thinking that this felt different. This felt real. 3 months in, he wanted me to meet his parents, and I was genuinely excited. I bought a nice bottle of wine, wore the kind of outfit that says, "I'm put together but not trying too hard," and prepared myself for the normal parental small talk about weather and traffic. What I got instead was Linda. She opened the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, looked me up and down like she was appraising furniture, and ushered us into a living room that felt more like a showroom than a home. Before I'd even sat down, she launched into what I can only describe as an interrogation disguised as conversation. "So, Emma, what do you do?" "Okay, normal." I told her about my job in marketing. "And where did you go to school?" "Fine." Standard parent question. "What do your parents do?" Getting weird, but maybe she's just thorough. "Do you rent or own?" Okay, now we're veering into audit territory. "What are your career goals? Do you have student loans? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I kept smiling, kept answering, watching Michael shift uncomfortably beside me while his father, Richard, sat in his armchair reading the newspaper like we weren't even there. The man didn't look up once during the entire 2-hour visit, not once. I left that house with a weird knot in my stomach, but when Michael apologized in the car, "She's just protective, she means well," I let it go. I brushed off the weird vibes because I liked Michael, and everyone's family is a little strange, right? Right. Spoiler alert, I should have trusted my gut. Over the next few months, I got a front row seat to the most textbook case of golden child syndrome I've ever witnessed, and trust me, it was a masterclass in dysfunction. Michael's younger brother Jake was 28, unemployed, living in his childhood bedroom and spending his days trading cryptocurrency and playing video games. But according to Linda, Jake was ambitious, finding himself and exploring his options. Meanwhile, Michael, who had a successful career as a software engineer, owned his own home, paid all his bills on time, and was generally killing it at being an adult, could do nothing right. Every family dinner was the same script. "Michael, why don't you call more? I'm your mother. I shouldn't have to hear about your life through Facebook." He'd called her 3 days ago. "Michael, you've gained weight. Are you eating properly? You look tired. Are you working too much?" He looked fine. Michael, when are you going to buy a real house? That condo is so small. What about when you have children? His condo was 1,500 square feet in a great neighborhood. I watched this happen week after week, watched Michael's shoulders tense every time his mother opened her mouth, watched him swallow whatever he was about to say, and just nod. And Jake? Jake would wander downstairs at 2 in the afternoon, grunt a greeting, and Linda would light up like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. Jake's been working so hard on his business ideas. She'd coo, as if scrolling through Reddit counted as entrepreneurship. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Michael was the responsible one, the one who had his life together, and therefore he was taken completely for granted. He was the safe bet, the reliable one, the one who would always be fine. Jake was the golden child who got endless chances, endless praise, and as I would soon discover, endless financial support. It was like watching someone water a plastic plant while the real one died of thirst. And the worst part? Michael didn't even seem to realize how messed up it was. This was just his normal. 6 months into our relationship, the money talk started, and they were about as subtle as a brick through a window. Linda would call Michael, and I'd watch his whole body change, shoulders up around his ears, jaw tight, that fake, cheerful voice he used when he was stressed. Then would come the request, always phrased the same way. You know, Michael, your father and I might need to borrow. I mean, we might need some help with Jake's business idea, or his car, or his credit card debt, or his networking event that required a new suit. Michael always said yes. Always. He'd hang up, transfer the money, and then we'd go back to whatever we were doing, like he hadn't just handed over a chunk of his paycheck to fund his brother's lifestyle. At first I didn't say anything because it wasn't my place, and also because I was still in that early relationship phase where you pretend not to notice red flags. But after watching this happen half a dozen times, after seeing Michael check his bank account with that particular grimace that means the number is lower than he'd like, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The breaking point was a $5,000 loan for Jake's car repairs. $5,000 for repairs on a BMW that Jake absolutely did not need and couldn't afford to maintain. We were having dinner when Michael told me, his voice flat, robotic, like he was reporting the weather. I put down my fork. Michael, I said carefully, do they ever pay you back? The laugh he gave me still haunts me sometimes. It was so hollow, so tired, so resigned. They're family, he said, not meeting my eyes. That's not how it works. And that's when I realized this wasn't borrowing. This was just taking, with a polite word attached to make everyone feel better about it. Michael was the family ATM, and the worst part was that he'd been conditioned to believe that questioning it made him a bad son. Michael proposed on a Saturday in April, on the beach at sunset, and it was everything I'd ever wanted. Romantic, thoughtful, perfect. He'd planned this whole elaborate scavenger hunt with clues that referenced our relationship, and when he finally got down on one knee, I ugly cried so hard I could barely say yes. We were floating on air for exactly 48 hours, right up until we told his parents. We drove to their house on Monday evening, both of us grinning like idiots, and the second we walked through the door, Michael announced, "We have news!" I expected squealing, maybe some tears of joy, at least a hug. What I got was Linda looking at my hand, looking at Michael and saying without missing a beat, "Well, I hope you're getting a prenup, Michael. You've worked hard for what you have." The room went silent. Michael's face went red. I just stood there, hands still extended to show off the ring, trying to process what had just happened. I made good money myself, not Michael-level software engineer money, but I was doing fine. I had my own savings, my own career, my own life. And yet here was Linda, essentially calling me a gold digger before we'd even set a date. Michael tried to laugh it off, his voice strained. "Mom, come on, let's just celebrate." But Linda wasn't done. She sat down on the couch, crossed her arms, and looked at me with this expression that I can only describe as smug concern. I'm just saying, divorce is expensive. Michael needs to protect himself. It's nothing personal, Emma. It's just smart. Nothing personal, right? Because telling your son to protect his assets from his future wife isn't personal at all. Richard finally looked up from his phone long enough to grunt, "Your mother has a point," then went back to scrolling. That's when it clicked. Linda didn't see me as Michael's partner, his equal, someone who loved him. She saw me as a threat to the family bank account. She assumed I was after Michael's money, which was almost funny considering what I knew, and she didn't. Almost. Wedding planning became a full contact sport, and Linda showed up to every match ready to fight. Michael and I were paying for the entire wedding ourselves, every single dollar. But that didn't stop his mother from having opinions about everything from the napkin color to the processional music. "That venue is too expensive," she announced when we showed her our choice, a beautiful garden space that fit our budget perfectly. I smiled through gritted teeth and reminded her it wasn't her money. "That dress is too revealing," she said when I showed her a picture of my dress, which had a completely normal, non-plunging neckline that showed exactly 0 inappropriate things. "Why are you inviting so many of your family members?" she asked when she saw the guest list, where I had 30 people and Michael had 50. Apparently, math was negotiable when it came to proving I was selfish. Every single decision became a battle. The flowers were too expensive, then too cheap, then the wrong color. The menu was too fancy, then not fancy enough, then included things Jake didn't like, as if Jake's preferences mattered for my wedding. She hated the photographer, the DJ, the invitations, my choice of bridesmaids, and the fact that we weren't getting married in a church. Michael tried to run interference, tried to set boundaries. But Linda had this way of making every criticism sound like loving concern. "I just want what's best for you two," she'd say, with that martyred sigh, like she was the one suffering. And Richard? Richard sat in his armchair, reading the newspaper, through every single one of these conversations, occasionally grunting in agreement with whatever Linda said, but never actually participating. The man was a ghost who occasionally voted. I started to wonder if he'd even noticed we were getting married, or if he thought Michael was just bringing home a really persistent house guest. By month 3 of wedding planning, I was stress-eating cookie dough and Googling how to uninvite your mother-in-law from your wedding without causing a family war. Spoiler, there's no good answer. 2 months before the wedding, Linda called and asked if she and Richard could meet with Michael privately to discuss something important. Michael, to his credit, told her immediately that if it involved money, and let's be honest, it always involved money, then I needed to be part of the conversation since we were about to be married. Linda reluctantly agreed, and we showed up at their house on a Tuesday night to find them sitting at the kitchen table with printed spreadsheets like this was a legitimate business meeting. Linda wasted no time. Jake had a startup idea, a revolutionary cryptocurrency trading platform, and they needed $50,000 to get it off the ground. $50,000. For Jake, who couldn't hold down a part-time job at Starbucks to trade cryptocurrency, which he'd already lost money doing as a hobby. I watched Michael's face, waiting for the automatic yes that always came, but this time something was different. He hesitated. That's a lot of money, Mom. Emma and I are getting married, buying a house soon." Linda's eyes immediately welled up with tears, and I had to admire the speed of it. Really, Olympic-level manipulation. "We're family," she said, her voice breaking. "You've always been there for us, Michael. Always. Don't you want your brother to succeed? Don't you want to see him thrive? We're not asking for a handout. We're asking you to invest in family." Richard nodded along like a dashboard bobblehead, finally contributing something to the conversation. Michael looked at me, then back at his mother, and said something I'd never heard him say before. "I need to think about it." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Linda's tears dried up instantly, and her eyes went cold, flat like a shark's. She looked at me, then at Michael, and said in this perfectly controlled voice, "I see. She's already changing you." Not asking, not wondering, stating it as fact. I was the villain in her story, and she'd just confirmed her own narrative. Here's the thing Linda didn't know, the thing almost nobody knew. I had money, real money. My grandmother had passed away a year before I met Michael, and she'd left me everything, her house, her investments, her savings. After selling the house and working with a financial advisor, I was sitting on roughly $2 million. I know. You're thinking, Emma, why didn't you mention this? Why let Linda treat you like some gold-digging opportunist? And the answer is complicated but also really simple. I lived modestly. I worked my regular marketing job because I liked it, because I needed structure and purpose, because having money didn't mean I wanted to sit around doing nothing. I drove a normal car, lived in a normal apartment, wore normal clothes. The inheritance sat in investment accounts, managed by my financial advisor, growing quietly while I lived my life. Only two people knew the full amount: my lawyer and that financial advisor. Not my parents, not my closest friends, and definitely not Michael. And before you judge me for that, let me explain. I hadn't told Michael yet, not because I didn't trust him. I did, completely. But because I wanted to be absolutely sure we were building something real. I'd seen what money did to people. I'd watched friendships dissolve when someone came into money. I'd seen family members turn into strangers over inheritance disputes. Money changed things, changed people, changed how they saw you and what they wanted from you. I needed to know that Michael loved me, for me, not for what I could provide. I needed to know that when he came home excited to see me, it was actually about seeing me, not about what I represented. And honestly, watching Linda treat me like I was some scheming opportunist while sitting on more money than their entire family combined was its own kind of karma. She'd made so many assumptions about who I was, what I wanted, why I was with her son. She'd never once considered that maybe, just maybe, I was exactly who I appeared to be. Someone who loved Michael and didn't need anything from him except himself. 3 days after the $50,000 request, which Michael ultimately declined, causing a week-long silent treatment from his mother, he brought up the prenup himself. We were having dinner, picking at takeout neither of us really wanted, when he said quietly, "Maybe my mom had a point about one thing. Not about you," he added quickly, seeing my expression, "but about the prenup. We should both protect what we have. It's not romantic, but it's smart." I didn't even hesitate. "I agree completely," I said, and watched his eyebrows shoot up. "Really?" He looked almost shocked, like he'd been bracing for an argument. "You're not offended?" I set down my fork and looked at him directly. "Michael, I have assets too. I think protecting both of us is smart. It's not about expecting to fail, it's about being realistic adults." The relief on his face was immediate and visible. His shoulders dropped, he let out this long breath, and he reached across the table for my hand. "God, I was so worried you'd think I didn't trust you, or that I was listening to my mom too much." We agreed right there to each get our own lawyers, to make it fair and balanced, to protect what we'd each worked for. Michael started talking about his house, his retirement accounts, his savings, and I sat there nodding, knowing that in about 5 minutes I was going to completely change this conversation. Because sitting across from this man, watching him try so hard to be responsible and fair, watching him stand up to his family for the first time in his life over that $50,000, I realized something. I trusted him completely, and he deserved to know the truth. "Michael," I said, interrupting his explanation about his 401k, "before we talk to lawyers, there's something I need to tell you about my assets." He looked at me curiously. "Okay?" I took a breath. It was time. I told him everything. My grandmother, the inheritance, the investments, the full amount. Michael sat there in complete silence while I explained, his face cycling through about 15 different expressions in the span of 2 minutes. When I finished, he just stared at me. Then he started laughing. Not a happy laugh, more like the kind of laugh you give when the universe reveals it's been playing a practical joke on you this entire time. 2 million, he said, still laughing, slightly hysterical now. You have $2 million. Then the laughter stopped, and he looked like he might be sick. Oh my God, Emma, my mother has been treating you like you're some gold digger after my money. And you have more than my entire family combined? I nodded. The absurdity wasn't lost on me either. Significantly more, if we're being honest. Michael dropped his head into his hands. The prenup, he mumbled. Oh my God, the prenup. You agreed so fast because it protects us both, I finished. Especially me. He looked up, and despite everything, we both started laughing again, real laughter this time, the kind that comes from tension finally breaking. Here was Linda, convinced I was after her son's modest assets, planning her protection strategies, making her pointed comments about divorce being expensive, and the whole time I was sitting on enough money to buy her house 3 times over. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. But then Michael's face got serious, worried. My parents can never know about this, he said firmly. Emma, I'm serious. If they find out... He didn't need to finish. I knew exactly what would happen. The request for loans would quadruple. Jake would suddenly have 100 business ideas. Linda would find reasons why we owed them, why family helps family, why my grandmother would have wanted me to share with Michael's family. It would never end. I agree, I said. This stays between us and our lawyers. Nobody else. Michael squeezed my hand. Thank you for telling me, and thank you for not thinking I'm like them. I smiled. You're nothing like them. That's why I said yes. We each hired lawyers, and the prenup drafting process was surprisingly painless, probably because we were both being honest, and neither of us was trying to screw the other over. The terms were straightforward. What you came into the marriage with, you leave with. Michael's assets were his house in the suburbs, his 401k that he'd been contributing to since his first job, and about $200,000 in savings and investments. My assets were, well, legally documented in excruciating detail. But when Michael's parents inevitably asked about the prenup, and we both knew they would, the plan was to stay vague. We both have some savings and retirement accounts, standard stuff, was going to be our rehearsed line. But here's where it got interesting. Michael asked his lawyer to add a specific clause about family loans. Any money given to family members during the marriage would be considered gifts, not loans, unless there was a separate legal document explicitly outlining repayment terms with signatures from both parties. His lawyer looked at him for a long moment and said, "That's specific. Do you anticipate needing this clause?" Michael's laugh was bitter. "Let's just say I've given my family about $75,000 over the years in loans that have never been repaid, and I'd like that pattern to stop now." The lawyer added the clause. When I met with my lawyer to review the final document, she read through it carefully, nodded, and looked at me with something like respect. "This is fair and thorough," she said. "You both protected yourselves without being adversarial. Honestly, this is one of the healthiest prenups I've reviewed." I signed it feeling relieved, secure, and completely unprepared for how much chaos this document was about to cause. Because while Michael and I knew what was in it, Linda was about to make some very incorrect assumptions about what it meant, and those assumptions were going to detonate like a bomb at our wedding reception. 1 month before the wedding, Linda called Michael and didn't even bother with pleasantries. "I need to see the prenup," she announced, like she was asking for the weather forecast. Michael, who was on speakerphone while we cooked dinner, actually laughed out loud. "Absolutely not," he said. "It's between me and Emma." I've never been prouder of him than in that moment, but Linda wasn't about to give up that easily. Her voice went shrill, indignant, wounded. "I'm your mother. I have a right to make sure you're protected. After everything your father and I have done for you, you won't even let me see a simple legal document?" Michael's jaw clenched, but he stayed calm. You don't have a right to our private legal documents, Mom. This isn't up for discussion. She hung up on him. Then she called back 10 minutes later crying. Then Richard called to say we were being disrespectful. Then Jake texted to say, "Why are you being weird about this? Like we were the problem for having boundaries." For the next 3 weeks, Linda launched a full-scale campaign to anyone who would listen. She told Michael's aunts that Emma was hiding something. She told their neighbors that she was just worried about her son. She posted vague Facebook statuses about how hard it is when your children shut you out when you're only trying to help. She called Michael's childhood friends to express her concerns that he was being manipulated. Every relative who called to RSVP got an earful about how Emma wouldn't let Linda see the prenup, which she spun as proof that I had something to hide, that I was taking advantage of her son, that she just wanted to make sure Michael wasn't being taken advantage of. The irony of Linda, who had taken advantage of Michael financially for years, being worried about someone else taking advantage of him, would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. Michael held firm though, and I loved him for it. Our marriage, our documents, our business, he kept repeating. But Linda wasn't done, not even close. The final week before the wedding, Linda went into full sabotage mode. And I mean that literally. She accidentally uninvited 3 of my bridesmaids from the rehearsal dinner, claiming there was a miscommunication with the restaurant about numbers, which was impressive considering she wasn't the one who made the reservation. She called the caterer and changed our order to include shellfish in half the dishes. I'm severely allergic to shellfish. She knew this. We'd discussed it multiple times. When Michael caught it 2 days before the wedding, she acted confused. "Oh, I thought that was just a preference, not an allergy." She cornered our photographer at the venue walkthrough and told him to focus on our family, not hers, because apparently my family attending my own wedding was an imposition. Michael was furious. He spent that entire week undoing his mother's damage, re-inviting my bridesmaids, fixing the catering order, having a very firm conversation with the photographer about whose wedding this actually was. But the damage was clear. Linda wanted me to know that she could reach into my wedding and twist things, that she had power, that I was marrying into her family and she was in charge. The final straw came 3 days before the wedding when she texted me directly. Not Michael, me. "I hope you know what you're doing. Marriage is about family. Our family." I stared at that text for a full minute, then walked into the living room and showed Michael. He read it, and I watched his face go from confused to angry to just exhausted. "One more week," he said, pulling me close. "One more week, and then we're married, and we can set real boundaries. I promise, Emma, this is going to change." I wanted to believe him, and mostly I did. But looking at that text, at those 3 words, our family, I had a sinking feeling that Linda wasn't going to go quietly into the role of respectful mother-in-law. She'd been building up to something. I could feel it. I just had no idea what. The wedding day started beautifully, the kind of perfect September morning that makes you believe the universe is on your side. I was in the bridal suite with my bridesmaids and my mother, drinking mimosas and laughing while someone curled my hair, and for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Linda at all. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "My mom is acting weird. She keeps smiling. I don't trust it." I looked at that message, felt a flutter of anxiety, then decided I was not letting Linda ruin this day. I texted back, "Just get to the altar. We've got this." And honestly, the ceremony was perfect. The weather held, the flowers looked incredible, my dress fit like a dream. And when I walked down that aisle and saw Michael waiting for me with tears in his eyes, everything else just fell away. We said our vows, we meant every word, and when we kissed, as husband and wife, I heard our guests cheer and felt genuinely, completely happy. Even Linda seemed okay during the ceremony. She cried during the vows, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, and for once the tears seemed genuine instead of manipulative. She smiled at me when we walked back down the aisle, and Richard actually stood up and clapped. I felt this surge of hope, this stupid, naive hope that maybe, we'd turned a corner. Maybe seeing us actually married, seeing how happy Michael was, had finally made Linda accept me. Maybe all the drama had been pre-wedding stress, and now we could move forward as a real family. I squeezed Michael's hand as we headed to the reception, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "See?" I whispered to him. "Your mom cried happy tears. Maybe this is a fresh start." Michael smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe," he said, but his grip on my hand tightened. He knew his mother better than I did. He knew that smile she'd been wearing all morning. And about an hour later, standing at my own reception, I was about to find out exactly what that smile meant. The reception was in full swing, guests mingling with drinks in hand, the DJ playing something upbeat while Michael and I made our rounds thanking people for coming. I was genuinely having a good time, riding the high of being newly married, when I noticed Linda holding court near the bar with a cluster of Michael's aunts and uncles. She was talking animatedly, gesturing with her phone, and something about her body language made my stomach drop. I couldn't hear her clearly over the music, but I caught snippets as I got closer. "Can't believe he fell for it. At least, we're protected now. The prenup proves she has nothing." I went cold. The champagne in my hand suddenly felt heavy, wrong. What was she talking about? What prenup information did she have? We hadn't told her anything specific, and the document itself was private, locked away with our lawyers. I changed direction and walked toward the group, my heart pounding. Linda was showing them something on her phone, and they were all nodding with these expressions of relief and vindication. Michael's Aunt Carol actually patted Linda's arm sympathetically, like Linda was the victim in some tragedy. Then Linda looked up and saw me approaching, and she smiled. That same smile from this morning, the one that had made Michael nervous, the one I'd stupidly interpreted as acceptance. It wasn't acceptance, it was triumph. "Oh, here she is," Linda announced loudly, loud enough that nearby conversation stopped and people turned to look. "Don't worry, honey. We're not wasting money on her. Michael's inheritance is safe." The words hit me like a physical blow. People were staring. The music suddenly felt too loud. Michael's Uncle Tom looked uncomfortable. Aunt Carol's expression was somewhere between pity and smugness. And Linda just stood there, phone in hand, looking at me like she'd just won some game I didn't even know we were playing. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. What inheritance? What money? We'd paid for this entire wedding ourselves. And how the hell did she get information about our prenup? I stood there frozen, my brain trying to process what was happening, when Michael appeared at my side, his face dark with fury. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice tight and controlled in that way that meant he was absolutely livid. Linda turned to him, and I swear she was practically glowing with satisfaction. "I got a copy of the prenup," she announced to him, to me, to everyone within earshot. "Richard's brother works at the courthouse. Filed documents are public record." That was a lie. Prenups aren't public record, I knew that much. But she'd clearly gotten her hands on something somehow, and she was wielding it like a weapon. She turned back to the gathered relatives, holding up her phone like she was presenting evidence in court. "It shows exactly what I thought. She has barely anything. A little savings, a retirement account, nothing substantial. Michael is completely protected from her gold digging." I felt Michael's hand grip mine, felt him about to explode, but Linda wasn't finished with her performance. "Mom, you don't understand," Michael started, but she cut him off with a wave of her hand. "I understand perfectly, Michael. I know you didn't want me to worry, but a mother knows. A mother protects her son." She straightened up, addressing the whole group now like she was making some grand proclamation. "That's why your father and I have decided we're not contributing to the household. We won't be providing any more loans or financial support. No money wasted on her benefit. What's yours stays yours." I almost laughed. I actually felt the laugh bubbling up in my throat, hysterical and sharp, because the audacity of this woman was genuinely impressive. They weren't contributing to the household. They'd never contributed anything except stress and guilt trips. Every dollar had flowed one direction, out of Michael's account and into theirs. And now Linda was standing at my wedding reception in front of dozens of guests, announcing that she was withholding support she'd never actually provided, while simultaneously calling me a gold digger based on a prenup she'd obtained through some sketchy, probably illegal means. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Michael lost it. I'd never seen him truly angry before, not like this, but something in him just snapped. "First of all," he said, his voice loud enough that the DJ actually lowered the music, "you've never contributed to our household, ever. Emma and I paid for this entire wedding ourselves. Every flower, every chair, every piece of cake you're about to eat. That's our money, not yours." Linda's mouth opened, but Michael wasn't done. "Second, you illegally obtained our prenup, which is a private legal document. Richard's brother works at the courthouse." Linda tried to interrupt, but Michael's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Richard doesn't have a brother. You're lying. Where did you actually get it?" I watched Linda falter, watched her realize she'd been caught in her own fiction, but she recovered quickly. "That doesn't matter. The point is, I was right about her, and now you're protected." "The point," Michael cut her off, his voice shaking now, "is that you've disrespected my wife all night. No, for 2 years. You've questioned her, judged her, accused her, and now you're standing at our wedding reception announcing to my entire family that you think she's a gold digger." Guests were full-on staring now. Aunt Carol had backed away from Linda. Uncle Tom was looking at his shoes. The music had stopped completely, and I could hear the uncomfortable shuffling of dozens of people pretending they weren't witnessing a family meltdown. Richard appeared from somewhere, looking panicked. "Michael, son, let's just calm down." "Where were you?" Michael turned on his father. "Where have you been for the past 2 years while Mom did all of this? Reading the newspaper? Pretending nothing was happening?" I touched Michael's arm gently. His whole body was vibrating with rage, and while I loved him for defending me, for finally standing up to them, this wasn't how I wanted this to go. Not with everyone watching, not at our wedding, not with Linda playing the victim. "Michael," I said quietly, "let me handle this." He looked at me, jaw clenched, and I saw him fighting with himself. Then he nodded, stepped back slightly, and I turned to face Linda with the calmest smile I could manage. I looked at Linda, at her smug expression and her phone still held up like a trophy, and spoke in the calmest, most pleasant voice I could manage. "Linda, I need to clarify something about the prenup, since you seem to have misunderstood." She crossed her arms, that sneer still on her face. "I understand perfectly. The prenup protects both of us," I continued, still calm, still smiling. "What we each brought into the marriage, we each keep. It's very fair, very balanced." Linda's sneer deepened. "Right. You're nothing and Michael's. My $2.1 million inheritance," I said clearly. "My investment portfolio and my trust fund." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. You could have heard a pin drop in that reception hall. Linda's face went blank, confused. "What?" "The prenup protects my assets, Linda, which are considerable." I kept my voice gentle, conversational, like I was discussing the weather. "My grandmother left me quite a bit when she passed away, and I've been very fortunate with my investments. The prenup ensures that what's mine stays mine, and what's Michael's stays Michael's. It's really quite simple." I paused, then added with the same pleasant tone. "It also includes a clause stating that any money Michael has given to family members over the years, I believe the total is around $75,000, are legally classified as gifts, not loans. So you're welcome for that, by the way. Consider it our contribution to Jake's journey of self-discovery." I watched Linda's face cycle through emotions like a slot machine, smug, to confused, to pale, to red. Her mouth opened and closed. The phone in her hand slowly lowered. Richard looked like he might pass out, and every single relative who'd been nodding along to Linda's gold digger narrative was suddenly very interested in their shoes, their drinks, anything but this conversation. Linda tried to backtrack immediately, her voice going high and defensive. We never. You should have told us. She looked around at the staring guests, at Richard's shocked face, back to me. How were we supposed to know? You live so modestly. You work a regular job. You never said anything. Why would I tell you? I asked, still calm, still composed. So you could ask me for money instead of Michael? So Jake could come to me with his business ideas? So every family dinner could include a pitch for why I should fund whatever project you've decided is important? Linda's mouth worked, but no sound came out, and that's when Jake pushed through the crowd, having apparently heard enough from wherever he'd been lurking. Wait, he said, looking between me and Michael. Emma has... How much? Michael's laugh was sharp and tired. And this, he said, looking at his brother, then his parents, is exactly why we didn't tell you. This right here. Because it's not about family. It's not about love or support. It's about what you can get from us. He took my hand. We're done. We're leaving. We walked out of our own reception with 2 hours still left on the clock, past whispering guests and gaping relatives, past the untouched wedding cake and the DJ who was desperately trying to figure out if he should start the music again. We went straight to the honeymoon suite we'd booked at the hotel, and the second the door closed behind us, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Emma, I heard what happened at your reception. Small town. Word travels. I need to tell you something. Linda tried to bribe a courthouse clerk to access your prenup. The clerk reported it, and I filed a formal complaint. I put her on speaker so Michael could hear. She tried to bribe someone? Offered $500 for a copy. The clerk refused, but Linda apparently found someone else willing to talk. I'm handling it. Michael's face was grim. Good, he said. File whatever you need to file. We spent that night in our honeymoon suite, still in our wedding clothes, alternating between laughing at the absurdity of it all, crying from the stress and relief, and planning what our boundaries were going to look like going forward. My wedding day hadn't ended the way I'd imagined, but sitting there with Michael, united against his family's chaos, I'd never felt more sure that I'd married the right person. The honeymoon was blissful. 2 weeks in Italy with our phones off, and the family drama left 3,000 miles behind us. We ate pasta, drank wine, explored ancient ruins, and didn't think about Linda once. It was perfect. Then we came home to 47 missed calls from Linda, 23 from Richard, and a voicemail box so full it had stopped accepting new messages. Michael blocked them both for a month. We needed space, needed to decompress, needed to figure out what our marriage was going to look like without constant interference. Linda eventually sent a text that was the definition of a non-apology. I'm sorry you were offended by my concerns. I was only trying to protect my son. We didn't respond. Jake tried to reach out to me directly on Facebook with a message about investment opportunities and how he'd love to discuss some exciting ventures with me. Blocked. 6 months later, we established firm boundaries. Supervised visits only, no discussion of money or finances, no loans or gifts in either direction. Linda behaved for exactly 1 visit, made it through an entire dinner without a passive-aggressive comment, and I actually thought maybe we'd made progress. Then, as we were leaving, she cornered me in the hallway and asked if I could loan her $10,000 for Jake's new business idea. We left and went low contact. 2 years later, Michael and I have a baby, a beautiful house, and a drama-free life. Linda sends gifts for our daughter, always appropriate, always respectful. And she's learned that respecting boundaries means she gets to be part of our lives. Cross them, and she doesn't. It's simple. Looking back, the prenup wasn't about protecting Michael from me or me from Michael. It protected both of us from his family, from their expectations and entitlement, and endless financial demands. Best legal document I ever signed. So, did I handle the wedding confrontation right? Or should I have just let her keep thinking I was broke and enjoy the irony in silence? Let me know what you would have done.